Hello, sound check. Sir Howard here. Welcome to our third installment of our discussion about human memory. Before we dig deeper into the third installment of this topic, let's first have a very quick review of the previous two topics on human memory. Subukan nating i-retrieve nyo yung mga natutunan nyo so far. Principle number 1, wherever you are right now, I want you to recall, maybe verbally or get a piece of paper and then write down what do you remember from principle number 1. Pause the video if you need to. And then you proceed to memory principle number 2 on a piece of paper, or you can just verbalize, talk to yourself, anything you remember from principle number 2. And also, let's not forget that in those two memory principles, I ask you to memorize a biblical passage, Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 to 6. Again, wherever you are right now, try to retrieve the exact words coming from Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 to 6. Ready? Retrieve. So just to check kung naalala nyo pa ba yung Proverbs 3, 5 to 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He shall make your path straight. Ako, subukan ko na walang kodigo. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He shall make your paths straight. Bakit ko na-memorize? Bakit ko na-retrieve? Because I rehearsed that biblical passage many times before. It is one of my life verses. No wonder, as I kept on reciting the verse in different situations in my life, it entered my long-term memory. So when I recite it right now, I am able to retrieve it easily. So again, I cannot emphasize how important the process of rehearsal is when we talk about the psychology of memory. The more you rehearse, the more you remember. The less you rehearse, the more you forget. So that's one of the foundation ideas in understanding human memory. You really need to rehearse if you want to remember more details. Now let's move on to principle number 3, which is very easy to understand. Memory can be improved. Our memory is just like our muscles. If we want to be stronger, if we want our muscles to be more efficient, to get bigger, to be more developed, the more we need to use it. The same thing with our memory. Kung gusto nating mas makaalala tayo, we want to improve our ability to remember, then we need to keep on using our memories. We can apply different techniques that can help us better use our memory and in the process, strengthen our memory. So again, you don't need to have a photographic memory for you to have a better memory. In fact, I would not even recommend that you have photographic memory. Although having a photographic memory, it's either you have it or not. It is a genetic thing. The brain cells of people with photographic memory are gifted. They function much better compared to the brain cells of the normal population. But again, our target is not to have a photographic memory, but just to improve our memory big time. And it requires techniques. You don't need special brain cells to really improve your memory. All you need is to be disciplined enough to apply these techniques that will strengthen memory. So let me share to you 5 techniques that you can use to strengthen your memory. Technique number 1, and I think this is the foundation of a better memory, is to get rid of distractions. This is a very important skill to develop. Your ability to discipline yourself to run away from distractions. Ano ibig sabihin ng distractions? When do you say that something is a distraction? I defined it this way. Any task or activity that has nothing to do with the current memory task is considered a distraction. So for example, you need to memorize something in front of you from your notebook or from your textbook. Anything that has nothing to do with your notebook and textbook is considered a distraction. For example, if you keep on looking at Facebook, you keep on looking at YouTube, you keep on checking your Twitter and other social media and other windows opened in your laptop that has nothing to do with the memory task at hand, that is considered a distraction. And that is one of the reasons why I think many students have poor memories nowadays. Kasi sa kultura natin ngayon, we are being taught how to be distracted. We are not being taught to run away from distraction. Rather, young people today are being shaped to search for, to seek distractions. And that is bad news because what memory research will tell you is a forgetful mind is a distracted mind. Let me repeat, a forgetful mind is a distracted mind. Again, quick question, why is a student forgetful? Quick answer, that student most likely is a distracted student. Now you may ask me, what is the role of distraction in making our memory poor? The answer, because when you are distracted, it interferes with the rehearsal process, or in other words, it will make you or it will force you to have lesser rehearsals. Sa Tagalog, mas kumukonti yung rehearsal mo kasi kapag distracted ka. Let me give you an example. Let's say we have two students right here studying for their exam. Student A is distracted, student B is focused because he disregarded the distractions. For student A, because he is distracted, look at this, he is able to rehearse his notes only 3 times. Okay, in 2 hours. Kasi sa 2 hours na yon, hindi lang yung pag-aaral yung ginagawa niya. The student on the side also checks on Facebook, also checks on YouTube, also checks on Twitter. So while doing all those things all at the same time, it limited his rehearsal into just 3 attempts. Now consider student B who is also studying for the same lesson for the same number of hours, 2 hours then. But what's different? He's not distracted. He turned off his cell phone. He turned off all electronic gadgets, nothing to do with the lesson at hand. It's just between him and the notebook and the book for 2 hours. He is able to rehearse for 10 attempts. Difference of 7 attempts or 7 rehearsal attempts. That 7 rehearsal attempts can spell the difference between a grade of a 1.0 and 4.0. Why did student B get a higher grade than student A? It has nothing to do with intelligence, okay? It has something to do with the number of rehearsals that they were able to do. Student B had more rehearsals than student A. Why? Because student B is less distracted than student A. You see, yan yung pinaka-contribution ng distraction. Bakit humihina yung memory natin if we don't get rid of this distraction? And I think culturally speaking, this is bad news for the Philippines because we are known to be the social media capital of the world. In fact, in one article, it is even said that the Philippines is leading the charts, social media addiction. Maraming mga Pilipino ngayon talagang super distracted when it comes to social media. If you want specific numbers on this, I did a little research here. This is very recent data. Noong January 2021, medyo putol yung slide dyan, no? Pero let me just say it. This is January 2021. They had a study. An average Filipino would be spending 4 hours and 15 minutes every day in social media. And I would say that spending your time in social media is a non-memory work. Hindi ka naman magsa-social media to rehearse things. Magsa-social media ka to entertain yourself, and entertainment does not involve any rehearsal. Right? In fact, the reason why you want to entertain yourself is because you don't like to rehearse. You want your mind to be quote-unquote relaxed by not doing any rehearsal works. So the more you spend time in social media, the more or the less you rehearse, you are not strengthening your memory. Problem is, most of our times are spent doing this activity where we don't exercise our memory. In fact, in another study, zoom in to those numbers, to the hours we spend in social media. Ang isang study sabi, most people will spend 9 years of their life doing entertainment work, which includes social media. That is 77,760 hours. You convert that into minutes, that's 4,665,600 minutes. That's the number of time we spend doing things that has nothing to do in exercising our memory. No wonder, again, when we talk about how rehearsal contributes to better memory and how Filipinos are no longer rehearsing that much because of too much distraction, no wonder a lot of our young people today have very poor memory. Now let's move on to technique number 2. To improve your memory, you need to pay attention or to sustain your focus. That's another skill that's very important for a better memory. This is your ability to lock in your attention to the current task at hand. Ang gusto ko yung mga words na yan, lock in. Naka-lock, naka-fix lang yung attention mo doon sa bagay na gusto mong i-memorize. Now, this is an entirely different skill or technique compared to number 1. Again, number 1 is about getting rid of distraction, while number 2 is about sustaining your attention to what you're studying. Kasi pwedeng gawin mo lang yung number 1, get rid of the distraction, pero hindi mo pinapansin yung notebook mo. That's possible. Right? You don't pay attention to what you need to memorize, although you don't have distractions. Those are two different things. Or maybe you got rid of the distractions, but what you do is you are daydreaming. Your mind is not in the material that you are memorizing. It also won't work. Again, technique number 2 is teaching us that we need to develop that skill to sustain our focus. This is the way you should study. As you can see on the diagram, 100% of your attention is spent. It's going towards the material that you are studying because you are in an environment that supports this. As you can see on the screen, walang mga distractions dyan. Right? Walang mga distractions, so it helps your attention to be sustained to the material that you are trying to memorize. Okay? Now, yung mga matitigas ang ulo, most students, they don't do this. Rather, they would rather have something to distract themselves while they're studying. And that is not good. Kapag merong something in the environment that distracts you, whether that's physical distraction such as Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or a mental distraction, meaning you distract yourself, you think of some other things other than the material that you are studying. Regardless, when you have distraction around you, it gets your attention, which is not good for the memory process, because when your attention is pulled away from the material that you are studying, let me demonstrate what happens. Imagine that this is the material that you are studying. Since you are looking at your notes, everything you see in your notebook goes to your sensory memory. Now, you would like this material to stay long enough in the sensory memory to be rehearsed para pumunta sa short-term memory and later on pupunta sa long-term memory. So that material needs to stay there long enough to be rehearsed. So it moves to the other memory structures. But what happens is when there is a distraction that happens in your environment or within your mind, now your attention shifts from the material to the distraction. And what happens? The material that you are paying attention to here is lost in your sensory memory. And since that material did not stay long enough in the sensory memory, it does not move to your short-term memory, which does not move to your long-term memory. O, diba? After ng distraction na yan, pag nawala na, anong gagawin mo? Babalik ka na naman dun sa material. O, umandar na yung oras. The problem is you only have 2 hours to review. O, hindi pa gumalaw yung material mo, hindi pa napunta sa long-term memory mo. And then another distraction happens. The material is lost again in sensory memory, not rehearsed towards short-term memory, which will not be rehearsed towards long-term memory. Wala ka na namang na-memorize dyan. And then you go back to the material again, somebody gets your attention, you go back to the material, something gets your attention. Ending, after 2 hours of study, your long-term memory does not absorb anything. So again, going back to my second point, what you need is a sustained attention. As you can see on the slide, you need 100% of your attention to focus on that material. That material stays long enough in the sensory memory, so it gets rehearsed, moves to your short-term memory, it gets rehearsed, moves to your long-term memory. Okay, that's what you need, sustained attention. But what disturbs our sustained attention? Again, let me repeat, paulit-ulit ako, but very important to really know, none other than distractions. That's the problem why you are unable to sustain your attention, because distractions are keep on pulling your attention from the material that you are studying. Like what? Television, social media, right? Or studying with a significant other. Please don't tell me na kaya mo gustong mag-review kasama yung boyfriend o yung girlfriend mo because of inspiration. Okay, actually, if you study with your boyfriend or girlfriend, they don't serve as inspiration, but they serve as a big distraction. So please don't try to do that. Okay, spend time with them after you have already encoded, after you have already memorized what you need to memorize. Tablets. Supposedly, tablets are tools to help us encode things better, to help us store the books that we need to memorize, but a lot of young people today, you look at their tablets, inside the tablets, there are more games than ebooks. So yung maraming tablets ngayon ng mga kabataan, it's more on a distraction rather than a tool for education. But special mention to malls around the Philippines. I have nothing against SM. I'm talking about malls in general. I think in the Philippines, we have a very poor zoning strategy when it comes to where we create schools or where we create malls, right? In the Philippines, we have this practice kung saan merong malapit na mall, may malapit na school, or vice versa, kung saan may malapit na school, merong malapit na mall. Now, I really don't agree with that setup, being a teacher of psychology, teaching memory, because when school is near a mall, the mall becomes more of a distraction to the students than a help. Although again, hindi ko naman i-deny na meron din namang advantages when you create school near malls because of practical reasons like more alternatives for students where to eat lunch, or if they need something to buy for a project, they are near the malls, right? But through my careful analysis, I realized that the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. Paano ko nasabi? Let me give you a real example. I live near SM Manila. Okay, so I live near SM Manila. The location of SM Manila, this mall near Manila City Hall, is very strategic. You know why? Because this is a mall that is surrounded by a number of schools here in Manila City. You name it. What are the schools that are near SM City Manila, either walking distance or one jeepney ride away? That's the definition of near. You start in Intramuros, there's Mapua, there's Letran, there is Lyceum, there is Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila or PLM. And then you move towards near SM City Manila, the following schools are walking distance to SM Manila. We have Adamson University, Philippine Normal University, Technological University of the Philippines, Technological Institute of the Philippines. All these schools are walking distance to SM Manila. Now, you go somewhere in Menjola, which is again very near this place. As you know, Menjola, ang daming mga eskwelahan dyan. We have San Beda. In front of San Beda is Centro Escolar University. Besides CEU, you have La Consolacion College. You have the College of the Holy Spirit. You have San Sebastian College. All these schools are very near SM Manila, and SM Manila, I would say, is distracting a lot of students. How did I know? Well, I have one time, I was teaching in Lasal, and my mom texted me that there's an emergency that I needed to buy medicine in SM Manila. Kasi nandoon yung butika na binibilhan nung medicine, no? So to make the long story short, I dismissed my class early on a Wednesday around 2 p.m. and drove my car from Lasal to SM Manila parking lot. Now, you will all agree with me that Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday lunch around 2 o'clock to 2:30 in the afternoon, this is a time where most students must be inside the schools. This is not yet dismissal time. Malayo pa sa 5 p.m. yan. And this is not too early that students are still on the way to school. 2 o'clock to 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon must be a school day. Students must flock within the vicinities of the campus. But when I entered SM Manila from the parking lot, I entered the cinema section. I was so surprised to see bunch of students, right, like this one, thinking of what movie to watch. And then I took a photo of them. Now they're decided what to watch. So these students will watch a movie. Tapos lumakad ako ng konti palabas ng SM Cinema. I thought there was a classroom in SM. Kasi ganun karami yung estudyanteng mga nakita ko. I got curious, what subject are they learning? Who is their teacher? But I realized I did not enter a classroom. Rather, I entered a place in SM called World of Fun. That's where I'm in. Those flock of students are inside a place called World of Fun, doing what? Having fun, obviously. Alright, like that. Now, you will all agree with me that in a place called World of Fun, there are no memory works here. There are no rehearsals here. Students are not practicing their faculty of memory, which they should. Being students, that's what you need. You need to be exercising your rehearsal over and over again so you become good in absorbing things that you learn in school. But again, if you go to these places on a Wednesday, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, there are no rehearsal works here. You are not using your memory. Now, for some of you who will say, baka naman kasi sir maaga sila pa inuuwi o baka naman absent yung teacher nila. Okay, let's say those things are true. But as a teacher, as a teacher of psychology teaching memory, I would rather want to see the students still within the campus, going somewhere quiet with no distractions, opening their books and notebooks and rehearse the things that they need to rehearse that is school related, which will improve their performance in their exams. I would rather see students do that within the campus, not like this in SM Manila. Another unhealthy practice that does not help you sustain your attention is when you study in coffee shops. I really hate students who study in coffee shops. It's not an ideal place to rehearse the things that you need to rehearse because of distractions. Tatandaan nyo, ang coffee shops are public places. It's not controlled. You cannot shut people up because you are studying. You cannot do that. So when you study in coffee shops, what happens is this model is happening. There will always be something in the coffee shop while you're studying which will get your attention, which will disturb your attention, which will affect the number of times you're going to rehearse the material. Mahirap mag-rehearse ng maraming beses in a public place like this because of, again, the countless of distractions that you will encounter. Let me give you an example. So again, this guy is looking at his book or notebook, whatever. So whatever he sees right there goes to his sensory memory to be rehearsed and goes to his short-term memory, later on to the long-term memory, right? So you know the drill. But since this is a coffee shop, a number of events may happen. In fact, events don't stop from happening, right? So may pumasok na interesting person. Now you see the interesting person, you look kung anong in-order niya, nawala na kaagad yung material mo sa sensory memory. And then you go back to the material, and then you saw a dog that's so cute, nawala na naman yung material. And then you go back to your material, nakita mo umulan ng malakas, nag-alala ka, wala ka kasing dalang payong, while you're staring at the rain, nawala na naman yung material. And then, bumalik ka na naman sa pinag-aaralan mo, there was a customer who tripped off, natapon yung coffee, nagkagulo yung mga customer, nawala ka na naman sa focus, nawala na naman yung material, so on and so forth. So the end story here is in your 3 hours staying in that public place, the number of times you rehearse your material was very limited because something else is always getting your attention. You are not able to sustain your attention. So it's not a good place to study. It's not a good place to rehearse information. Still, the best place for me to study is in the library. That's the reason why in the library, a lot of us feel sleepy when inside the library. What is the psychological explanation for that? Bakit nakakaantok sa library? Kasi wala masyadong events, wala masyadong distraction. Right? It's just between you and the book, between you and the notebook. Bawal maingay sa library. It's the most quiet place in the campus because the university knows that this is a place where students are rehearsing, doing memory works that you need to meet the demands of the academic life, such as passing an exam. Kaya again, kapag nag-face-to-face na ulit, I highly recommend if you are studying for an exam, you do that in a library, not in a coffee shop. Because when you study in the library, you are able to apply this model, right? You pay attention to what you're studying. The material enters your sensory memory. You rehearse it, goes to your short-term memory. You rehearse it and goes to your long-term memory. That's what you need. And library is an environment that perfectly supports that memory process. Alright, and also, one more thing I really just want to open here in this class is sustained attention. Again, we're still talking about sustained attention, alright? It is a skill at the same time a discipline. I think I'm done talking about this as a skill, but let me emphasize on this discipline. Sustained attention is a discipline. It's something that you choose to do. One of the things that I hate from a student is when a student tells other students or in evaluation that they hate a certain teacher because the teacher is boring. Diba? Sa Tagalog, boring teacher ko eh. I hate that comment coming from a student. You know why? That word boring, it is a term that talks about attention. You paraphrase this statement, boring teacher ko eh. The student is saying, my teacher did not sustain my attention. Right? That's what the student is saying. I hate this teacher. I don't like this teacher because this teacher does not hold my attention. He or she does not sustain my attention, which I think that statement is erroneous. It's not correct because the sustenance of your attention depends on the student or the learner and not on the teacher. The best that we could do as teacher is to get your attention during the start of the class. Get attention. So meron kaming opening prayer, opening activity, or opening joke. That's what we need to do. Just to get the attention, but to sustain your attention, that's on you. Unfortunately, many students today, when they sense that their attention is no longer being sustained by the teacher, they choose to be distracted. Diba? Umamin kayo, maraming ganyan. Diba? Kapag nabobore na kayo sa lesson, the lesson is no longer sustaining your attention, your brain, being an addict towards entertainment, it finds other things to think about other than what the teacher is teaching during an online class. Ano yung mga bagay na pwedeng gawin kapag nabobore ka na sa class ni sir, sa class ni miss in an online class? You play an online game while you mute the actual lesson. See? Now you play Call of Duty while there is an online class. This is a practice of a distracted student. That's why it's so unfair when students say that online learning sucks, that they don't learn anything from the teacher because he or she is boring. Before you blame the system, before you blame the teacher, why you're not learning, please take a look at yourself first. Self-reflection first. Are you disciplined enough to sustain your attention while an online class is running? Like for example, right now, how many of you can sincerely say 100% of your attention is just with me? Right? Chances are, if you begin to get bored with the things that I'm saying, again, that brain of yours will look for distractions to deal with my sense of being boring. That is not a good habit. That is a habit that you need to change. You need to discipline yourself that no matter how hard your brain tells you to lose focus and pay attention to something else, what you do, you control your own mind and sustain your attention no matter what. Remember this, your attention is your responsibility. Poor grades, not learning much from online learning. There are many factors why this can happen, but one of the first things that you need to check, do you sustain your attention? That's why if you're asking me as a psychologist, one of the things that we can really reshape, one of the things we can do to reshape the brains of students today with poor sustenance of attention is we need to have entertainment detox. Unti-unti dapat i-train ulit natin yung mind natin na hindi laging na-entertain because it makes our minds undisciplined. We lose focus. We run for distractions because that's what entertainment is teaching us. Don't focus. You get bored, you find something else to pay attention to. But the less we entertain ourselves and the more we practice sustaining our attention, the better our memory becomes. Even with our spiritual life, this applies. For those of you who feel that, why is it you are not growing spiritually? Why is it that you feel that God is far away from you? Well, ask yourself, is it because you are spiritually distracted? Maybe you are no longer focused on God and on His Word. Rather, you are more focused on the things of this world. That's why the author of Proverbs warned us about this. Sabi niya, do not swerve to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. Do not swerve. In other words, do not lose focus on things that are important, which is this one. Dapat dire-diretso ka lang spiritually. But since you are a friend of the world, you love paying attention to things that the world is showing you. So what happens? Instead of going straight, instead of just becoming spiritual, you go left and right, you get spiritually distracted. And in the process, the result is you are not becoming a fruitful Christian. So that's technique number 2. Please, please, please practice your skill of sustaining your attention. Technique number 3, another way to improve on your memory is to learn how to visualize the information that your mind can sense. Because trivia, did you know that our brain is a very visual brain? Our brain has a bias towards things that are very visual. Everything that we sense, everything that we hear, when we hear it, our brain converts that into an image. In fact, there is a part of our brain somewhere behind our heads. It's a big chunk of a brain part called the occipital lobe. We'll talk about this in biopsychology, but the main function of the occipital lobe is to process visual information. We need an entirely separate part of the brain to process visual information, which tells us that our brain is really designed to be very visual. Let me demonstrate. For example, if I ask you to think of a dog, right? Or think of a vegetable, or think of a car, chances are, you did not see letters. Hindi mo nakita yung D-O-G or C-A-R. Diba? No. You didn't see the letters. Rather, when I said dog, when I said car, you saw an actual dog. You saw an actual car in your mind. Because your occipital lobe converted those words into an image. Because again, we have a very visual brain. We have a very visual mind. And we got that from God, from our Creator. Because God is a visual God. How did we know? Look at Genesis 1:31. The first time that He commented on His creation and God saw, look at that word, saw. Ginagamit mo yung salitang yan when you refer to a sense of sight, right? So God has a sense of sight. God saw everything He created, and His comment with what we saw was it was very good. And so when God created us in His own image, what does that mean? We inherited from Him that attribute. He's a visual God. We are also visual creatures. That's the way our mind works. It turns everything into visual form. Let me demonstrate again how visual your mind is. I want you to memorize the following words, not necessarily in order. Pwedeng maglaktaw-laktaw. Alright? And then try to recall it. Pause the video if you need to. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do your best. Recall all the words. And then you check what were the words and count the number of correct answers. Perfect score is 7. Our cutoff is 5 to 7. How about you try to memorize this list of words? Ready? Second list of words, go. Just pause the video if you need to. And then the list will disappear. Try to retrieve all those words that you saw. Pause the video if you need to. And then, just like in the first list, you check the words. Ilan ang na-memorize mo? Cut-off natin is again 5. 5 and above. Now, chances are, if you are most students going back to those two lists, it's either, number 1, you will have higher scores here than this list. Or maybe, you have the same scores between this list and this list, but, here's the thing, you exerted more effort memorizing these words compared to these words. The question is why? What is the difference between list 1 and list 2? Well, the words in list 1 are easily visualized. It is so easy to see a car, a laptop, a cell phone, a chicken, a rice cooker, a USB, a handkerchief inside your head. Because these are concrete things. It's so easy to visualize these words into your minds. Compared to the second list, it's so hard to visualize discipline. It's so hard to visualize fairness, generosity, unity, because these words are abstract words. Our minds are having a difficult time processing abstract words compared to concrete words because again, our mind is very visual. So what can we do about this? Application is, if our mind is so visual, we need to take advantage of this. Let's do our best to convert the information that we are rehearsing into an image form. That will be a very big help for our memory. For example, lagi mo nalilimutan yung salitang stomata. It's a very technical term. It's not a common word. So you find it hard to memorize this, right? Most students, would they memorize stomata? By repeating the word over and over again or spell it over and over again. Stomata, 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 stomata. S-T-O-M-A-T-A, S-T-O-M-A-T-A. That's very high school. But since you know psychology, you know that your brain is a visual brain, you help your brain easily absorb the word stomata. By how? You convert the word into an image. So somewhere in your notebook, what you do here is you draw a stomach with a mata. Stomach with a mata. And you memorize this image. And whenever you memorize this image, now you remember the term stomata. It's easier retrieved because it is anchored, it is connected to an image which your brain likes. You see? That's how you convert things visually when you try to remember details. Even in history, we should do this. Many students, they hate history. Why? Lots of memorization, especially of names and dates, right? You hate that. Lagi mo nalilimutan yung name, lagi mo nalilimutan yung date. Well, the reason why you always forget the name and the date is because you don't convert it into visual form, right? Most students, again, how would they memorize historical details like this? Repetition. Basahin mo ng basahin. Sigmund Freud, Sigmund Freud, Sigmund Freud. June 12, 1898, June 12, 1898. That's not the way to help your brain better store this information. What you do? Again, visualize. Hanap ka ng picture ni Sigmund Freud. Look at his different pictures. And you see Sigmund Freud, right? You see his face. You see he's always holding a cigarette. And then you read more about Freud. You learned that he died because of oral cancer because he was a chain smoker. So when you remember those details, he's always formal. He always holds cigarette. He died of oral cancer because of this. You're able to visualize these things and connect it to the word Sigmund Freud. So the next time your teacher or an exam asks you to retrieve the name Sigmund Freud, it's easier because Sigmund Freud in your mind is visualized by his picture. Ganun din dapat sa date. Huwag kang memorize ng June 12, 1898. Rather, you ask yourself, what specifically happened during June 12, 1898? Hanap ka ng picture na nangyari ng June 12, 1898 and now you realize that June 12, 1898 is Philippine independence. The first time that we wave our flag as a symbol that we are officially free from the influence of the Spaniards. Alright, so you do that. Lalong-lalo na when you take down notes. Studies show that it's better if you try to convert some ideas in your notes into visual form. Pag meron kang nakitang idea in your notebook na kaya mo namang i-drawing into a picture, you do that to help your brain absorb that information. No need to draw so well. Especially if you're not an artist, right? Okay lang. Basta nag-effort ka lang na gawin mong visual yung isang information na verbal, that is already enough. So try doing that. The next time you take notes, if you can, write down or draw a visual object in your notebook that represents a certain idea that later on you will going to rehearse. Alright? I hope you're learning something so far. Let's move on to technique number 4, stop cramming. That's one of the ways to improve your memory big time. You don't force a large chunk of information into your mind in just a short time. Stop procrastinating. This is what procrastination does to you. Focus on the diagram. So when you procrastinate, let's say you study an hour before an exam, you get your notes, you look at your notes, everything you see in your notes goes to your sensory memory. And then you rehearse the note, goes to your short-term memory. But since time is up, malapit nang mag-test, what happens? You don't rehearse enough to move that information to your long-term memory. So before you know it, since that information is not in your long-term memory, the short-term memory will delete it. Right? So again, because you're cramming, sensory memory, the information reaches only your short-term memory, not the long-term memory, and eventually that information gets deleted. Now you enter the exam, your long-term memory is empty, and you fail the exam. Right? And then you'll tell me the reason why you failed the exam is because you had a mental block. It's not mental block. It's your short-term memory deleting the information that you need for the exam. It's the information that you need not reaching your long-term memory because of lack of rehearsal. So if you want to pass big exams, lalong-lalo na kapag malapit na yung finals week, di ba? If you want to pass big exams, this is what your memory should look like. The information that you need for the exam must be found in your long-term memory. So that all you need to do is to go back to your long-term memory and retrieve the information being demanded by the exam, and you end up passing the exam. But again, in the first place, how did that information reach the long-term memory? It took a lot of time. Enough time for you to rehearse that information, to move that information from sensory memory to short-term memory to long-term memory. And whenever I teach this slide, again, I remembered my slide a while ago about the lost times that we spent for mindless things, for useless things. Ask yourself, what if some of this time that you wasted for doing entertainment things, you spent in rehearsing things that will improve your life? Right? Let's say, for example, let's place some of these minutes right here to this one. Kuha tayo ng 3 million. Mag-iwan tayo ng 1 million for entertainment. Again, entertainment is not bad as long as it's very limited. As long as it's lesser than our time for rehearsal. 1 million minutes for entertainment and 3 million minutes for rehearsing things that are important. Can you imagine what can you do? How your life would be different? Maybe you already know 5 languages right now. Maybe you are already working for your third master's degree. Maybe you know a lot of books, classic books, that really change your perspective about the world and about yourself. If only you spent those minutes rehearsing those things that can make your life better. Or maybe because you love rehearsing your sport, you're able to do this. Shutting your eyes while taking a free throw and the ball goes in. Did you think Michael Jordan is inborn? This is his inborn skill? That's why he's able to do that? Answer, no. The reason why he's able to do that is because in his long-term memory, his free throw muscle memory is so intact. It's so intact. So he does it so well. But how did that memory enter this long-term memory? Countless hours in the gym, working out on his shots. The more rehearsal that you do, the more you enhance your skills. Alright? So I hope one lesson that we can learn here, let's be wiser. Let's be smarter in how we spend our time. I hope we spend our time rehearsing things that are important in life. And last one, technique number 5 to improve your memory is sleep. Yes, you heard it right. There is a strong link between how good your memory is and how much hours you sleep. Studies after studies have shown that if you compare people who are sleep deprived and people who have complete sleep, those people in the complete sleep, they get higher scores in basically all kinds of exams compared to those people who are sleep deprived. And you know why? Because it has something to do with memory consolidation. Memory consolidation is a process where the information from short-term memory is being moved to the long-term memory, and those memories are being solidified in the long-term memory. What do you mean by solidified? When you wake up in the morning and you need the information that you have stored the night before, what happens is your long-term memory easily retrieves those memory because it's solidified. Kumbaga sa Tagalog, tinataas, nakataas yung mga kinakailangan mong memory on top of your long-term memory. But again, memory consolidation only happens when you have complete 8 hours of sleep, when you're able to enter the REM stage of sleep or the rapid eye movement. Because when we sleep, we undergo stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then REM sleep. REM, when you reach this is where your brain will start the memory consolidation. It will solidify the memories, the details that you will need to retrieve later on. So given this memory consolidation, you have to realize that a lot of students today, they have a wrong framework whenever they have a big exam. Karamihan ng mga estudyante, ito ang framework. Pag may malaking exam, no? Wala tong tulugan. They will rehearse all night. In English, you call this an all-nighter. You pull an all-nighter. And what do you do in an all-nighter? You don't sleep. The entire night, you study for an exam that you will take in less than 24 hours. As a result, you don't sleep or you have less sleep. Your brain does not experience REM. So there's no memory consolidation. You take the exam, you fail the exam. Because the memory, the details that you have rehearsed were not consolidated in your long-term memory. And the root cause was cramming. Right? So the correct framework is, dapat, kapag may malaki kang exam, it's midterm exam or final exam, dapat ganito ang framework mo. You study in advance. You study every day. You study even if there is no quiz the next meeting. That's why I am for surprise quizzes. When teachers give surprise quizzes, the students will be forced to always study even if there's no announced quiz. Yan ang mahirap kapag ina-announce po kung kailan yung quiz eh. When you announce when the quiz will be, the tendency is students will only study if there is an upcoming quiz. But if they know there will be no quiz for that day, they will not study. They will not rehearse. But imagine if the teacher is known to give surprise quizzes. You'll never know when the quiz will come. Tendency of students is they will always study. They will always rehearse just to be sure, which is good for the student, right? Because when the student does this every day, studying the notes every day, even if there's no quiz, comes the finals week. Kailangan bang i-memorize ng estudyante lahat yung laman ng notebook for the first time? No. Why? Because the student is already highly familiar with the contents of the notes. In fact, I would say more than 90% of things in the notes are already in his or her long-term memory. Why? Because of constant rehearsal within the term. Because that student reviews every day. So that's one practical tip that I want you to do. Review every day. Rehearse and rehearse and rehearse even if there's no quiz. So that when the big exam comes, the night before, ano lang ba dapat ginagawa night before a big exam? Number 1, konting review. Again, to place those information you need on top of your head, on top of your long-term memory. But that review will be very quick. Mga 45 minutes lang yan. And then, you give yourself a complete 8 hours of sleep for you to reach REM, and those memories will be consolidated. Although meron akong exception, okay? What is my only exception for allowing you to still continue this framework? If you tell me that you are summa cum laude because of this, then continue doing this. Tama, no? Wala nang tataas sa summa cum laude. If this framework is making you a summa cum laude, which I doubt, but if you do, if you know someone, then go lang. But if you tell me that your CGPA is 1.5 and this is your framework, I would tell you that's the reason why your grade is a 1.5. And the good news is that 1.5 can become a 4.0 if you apply the correct framework, which is this. Alright? Not even magna cum laude, by the way. Sir, paano kung magna cum laude? Okay lang ba to continue this framework? My answer? Hindi pa rin. Bakit? If you are magna cum laude and you're applying this framework, try applying the right framework. Maybe you become a summa cum laude. You still have something to improve. Alright? So those are the 5 different techniques that you can do to improve your memory. I hope I was able to help you do that. So to summarize everything I've told you, get rid of distractions, number 1. Number 2, learn how to sustain your attention. Number 3, your brain is a visual brain, so take advantage of it by visualizing information that you are memorizing. Number 4, stop cramming to increase your rehearsals. And number 5, you rehearse what you need to rehearse, and then you give yourself a complete 8 hours of sleep. I guarantee you, by doing all these 5 consistently, you develop your discipline to do all these 5, it will improve your memory big time. Wala ka mang photographic memory, but malayo na yung mararating ng memory mo if you consistently and with discipline apply these different techniques. Okay? So that ends our 3rd video about human memory. If you have any questions about any of the video that you have seen, just post a comment in the comment section, and I'm going to do my best to answer all those questions. All right? So thank you for listening. Sir Howard here. Until next time, I'll see you. God bless. Bye-bye.